Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fran Kelleher, and welcome to the Housing Opportunity Commission of Montgomery County's Administrative and Regulatory Committee. Today is Monday, March 20th of 2023, and we have a couple of items to consider on today's agenda. But first, I would like to introduce the commissioner to my left, Commissioner Linda Kroom, who is a member of the committee and will be with us today. Commissioner Pamela Byrd is also a member of the committee and is going to be joining us in a few minutes via Zoom. So we will be having a hybrid meeting today of both in-person and electronic. Our first item on today's agenda is to approve the minutes of the November 21st, 2022 Administrative and Regulatory Committee. Is there a motion to approve November 21st, 2022 Administrative and Regulatory Committee minutes?
So moved.
I second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The minutes are approved. For new business items today, the first is to consider an amendment to the Housing Opportunities Commission Procurement Policy purchasing limits for micro purchases when we are working on renovations to our properties. And I would like to invite our Executive Director, Chelsea Andrews, to introduce the topic to us.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner Kroom, members of the public, and HOC staff. This particular matter is specifically pertaining to what's called micro purchases. In our current procurement policy, we have the ability to have an expedited approach for procurements that fall below a 5,000 threshold. This threshold has not been updated for HOC since 2017. And of course, since that time, inflation and increased costs have resulted in just the same type of items that we would have been able to purchase many years ago under that threshold, increasing in costs. After looking at our procurement policy, but also reviewing HUD's approach to micro purchases, it is our recommendation to increase the micro purchasing to $10,000 to align with the HUD requirements as it pertains to micro purchases. I'm joined by staff that represent our procurement office, Michael Ruth, who is our assistant procurement officer, as well as Ellen Goff, who is our acting director of property management, to be able to provide additional context and assurance, as well as our general counsel, who is participating virtually, Asha Memon. I will just indicate that while we initially presented this request because of increased costs with property management, after further review and looking at our entire purchase limits, it is our request that this micro purchase be broader than just the maintenance related expenditures, similar to HUD, where the increase is pertaining to either to any type of item up to 10,000. But the reason that we initially looked at this was initially driven by the increased costs in property management. I'll turn it over to Michael Ruth to just quickly recap what I stated. We have Ellen Goff here to answer any questions as it pertains to what we're seeing in trends with property management. And again, Asha, who can assure us that our modified policy would be in alignment with the HUD-approved procurement guidelines.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Ruth, and I'm the Assistant Procurement Officer here at the agency. In the nearly 6 years since the adoption of the procurement policy, staff has seen increases in costs of goods and services, particularly for maintenance-related purchases. The recent escalation in inflation and supply chain deficiencies related to the COVID-19 pandemic, the current micro purchase limit no longer aligns with the current market. As property management and maintenance staff work to complete routine maintenance, emergency repairs, homeowner association violations, and unit turns, Many of the proposals received for service and equipment replacement exceed the current limit of $5,000 for micro purchases. Staff is seeking approval to amend section 5.2B of the procurement policy to increase the limit for micro purchase that do not have Davis-Bacon requirements from $5,000 to $10,000. There would be no adverse impact on HOC's fiscal year 2023 operating budget. Funding sources for all maintenance-related purchases come from property and capital budgets or from county capital improvement program funding. All other funding would be from respective property budgets or from other sources that have been approved by the commission. This proposed change in policy would align HOC with the federal government's procurement policy and enable staff to complete repairs including HVAC replacement, hot water heater and roof replacements, unit turns, and emergency plumbing repairs more efficiently. Staff requests that the Administrative and Regulatory Commission join in its recommendation to the Commission to approve and amend the HOC procurement policy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have questions about specifically about property management?
I have a question.
Sure.
I need to know what the Davis-Bacon, you said, what is that? I don't know what that is. The Davis-Bacon requirements, if it don't have the Davis-Bacon requirements.
Sure. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Oh, I'm sorry, for the record, I'm Ellen Goff. I'm the Acting Director of Property Management. So on certain construction projects, there are Davis-Bacon wage scales that are required. And it depends on the funding source. So in this particular case, if there were any projects, typically it's major construction, but anything using federal dollars, then those would be subject to Davis-Bacon. So in this request, we're asking for the increase for non-Davis-Bacon wage required purchases.
And you're asking for from 5,000 to 10,000.
Correct.
That's what you're asking for.
And Commissioner Croom, just to reiterate, that term Davis-Bacon is a term that is used in the federal government as it pertains to construction expenditures, and it triggers many requirements, Section 3 and other requirements. And so we want to set that aside. We're not talking about any of those types of projects. And to be clear, it's not 5,000 to 10, we want 0 to 10,000 as the latitude for the micro purchases.
Would this be for maintenance?
Well, yes, and it was driven by our maintenance division raising this as a constant issue. And one of the areas that we wanted to provide context was how much the costs have gone up for a roof replacement or HVAC repairs and maintenance repairs. And so wanted to make sure that we provided that context, but upon review as it pertains to the agency as a whole and not to keep coming to this committee piecemeal, there are definitely other divisions that are also impacted by the cost of inflation and the costs that have just increased since the last time we've looked at this. As you'll see, HUD back in 2019, almost 5 years ago, went and increased their micro purchasing limits and allowed housing authorities to do the same from 5,000 to 10,000.
So the actual revision that we would make to our policy would not specify a department. It would simply say that the category of micro purchasing, bringing it into line with federal regulations, would be from $0 to $10,000.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay. Great. Any more questions?
No, that's good.
Okay. Is there a motion that this committee join staff in recommending to the full commission that HOC amend its procurement policy purchasing limits for micro purchases to the $1,000 limit?
So moved.
I second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, we have Commissioner Byrd has joined us, I can hear. Thank you, Commissioner Byrd. So that is approved unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is to consider the HOC fiscal year 2024 annual public housing agency plan. This is a plan that is submitted every year to Housing and Urban Development related to public housing. Both HUD and HOC have been moving away from public housing in its technical sense defined by HUD as a means of providing housing. Not that we are slowing down in our provision of housing. We've actually been accelerating the amount of housing we are bringing to the market. But this applies only to the public housing as it is technically defined by Housing and Urban Development. And so again, I invite our Executive Director, Chelsea Andrews, to introduce the topic for the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This matter will be presented by our compliance team, both our Chief Compliance Officer, Darcel Cox, and Elliot Rule, the Management and Compliance Analysts that support preparation of this matter for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Elliot Rule. I'm a Management Compliance Analyst with HOC's Compliance Division, and I'm here today to discuss the submission of HOC's fiscal year 2024 annual public housing agency plan. Our overall goal is to authorize the Executive Director of the Housing Opportunities Commission of Montgomery County or her designee to submit the fiscal year 2024 annual PHA plan. HOC must submit a 5-year plan informing the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, residents, and the public of HOC's mission for serving the needs of low-income and very low-income families, highlighting its housing choice voucher and public housing programs. Annually, HOC must submit updates to the 5-year PHA plan. The Quality Housing and Work Responsibility Act of 1998, or QUARA, became law on October 21st, 1998. This year, HOC is submitting its 24th annual PHA plan for HOC's fiscal year 2024, which begins on July 1st, 2023 and ends on June 30th, 2024. HOC's annual PHA plan provides details about immediate operations, services, programs, and program participants. In addition, the plan outlines the agency's strategy for addressing the housing needs of Montgomery County residents. HOC submitted its 5-year PHA plan for fiscal year 2020, which covers the period of fiscal year 2020 to 2024. The 5-year PHA plan describes HOC's mission as well as its long-range goals and objectives for achieving its mission over the 5 years outlined within the plan. Much of the current 5-year PHA plan focused on HOC's use of the Rental Assistance Demonstration, or RAD program, to convert the agency's public housing portfolio to project-based rental assistance and project-based vouchers. HOC must submit the fiscal year 2024 annual PHA plan to HUD 75 days prior to the start of the fiscal year covered in the plan, which is April 17, 2023. The substantive changes subsequent to this year's annual PHA plan are updates to the Housing Choice Voucher Administrative Plan, HUD approval to increase HOC's payment standards, updated Family Self-Sufficiency Action Plan, and the Housing Resources Division's Housing Choice Voucher and Project-Based Voucher activity. The Housing Resources Division made revisions to 7 chapters of the Housing Choice Voucher Administrative Plan, which governs HOC's Housing Choice Voucher program. These revisions include updates to language pertaining to live-in aids, income verification, voucher extensions, housing quality standards inspections, virtual remote video inspections, and the home ownership program. Public and Indian Housing, or PIH Notice 2022-30, extension of certain regulatory waivers for the Housing Choice Voucher program and streamlined review process provides a streamlined process for PHAs to provide continued flexibility to respond to the pandemic, especially in fluctuating rental markets. HOC requested the voucher tenancy waiver, which allowed PHAs to establish payment standards from 111% to 120% of the applicable fair market rent. After a detailed analysis of HOC's current voucher portfolio, HOC found that increasing the payment standard to 112% of the FMR would reduce rent burden for 80% of rent burden families while maintaining a recommended reserve balance of 4 to 6% of our annual budget authority. HUD granted approval for HOC to increase the payment standards to 112% of the FMR. HUD published the streamlining and implementation of economic growth, regulatory relief, and consumer protection action changes to Family Self-Sufficiency Program final rule on May 17, 2022. The final rule mandated numerous changes to the FSS program. The PHA's demonstration of compliance with the mandates were required by November 14, 2022, HUD also required HOC to submit its updated FSS action plan for approval by September 30th, 2022, which was 45 days prior to the compliance date. HOC received HUD approval September 26, 2022. The fiscal year 2024 PHA plan also highlights recently completed, ongoing, and future renovation and construction projects that include project-based vouchers. These project-based voucher units are governed by HOC's Housing Choice Voucher Program. Staff released a draft of the fiscal year 2024 annual PHA plan to the public on February 16, 2023. In addition, staff provided the Resident Advisory Board with a copy of the fiscal year 2024 annual PHA plan for review and comment. The Resident Advisory Board will review the plan, submit comments, and provide a letter of endorsement, which HOC will submit as one of the supporting documents to HUD on or before April 17, 2023. HOC will hold a public hearing for the annual plan on April 3rd, 2023 at 11 o'clock a.m. at HOC's Kensington office. Interested parties will also have the option to view the meeting virtually via YouTube. Our issue for consideration is that the Administrative and Regulatory Committee wish to join staff's recommendation to the Commission to authorize the Executive Director or her designee to submit the fiscal year 2024 annual PHA plan to HUD. It's for discussion at today's Administrative and Regulatory Committee, March 20, 2023, for formal Commission action on April 5th, 2023. Staff recommends that the Administrative and Regulatory Committee join staff's recommendations to the Commission to authorize the Executive Director or her designee to submit the fiscal year 2024 annual PHA plan to HUD on or before April 17, 2023. I'm glad to answer any questions about the fiscal year 2024 PHA plan.
Commissioners, I'd like to also just add that if we receive any public comment, that we would request and or reach out to this committee for a subsequent meeting. We are also, in response to the chair's request, looking at the year ahead in terms of when different matters will come before this committee, and look forward to providing the committee with a work plan that includes some of the standing items that come before this committee, building in ample time for public engagement and presentation before the board.
Thank you. That's excellent. So either Commissioner Byrd or Commissioner Croom have any questions for staff regarding the update to the public housing plan?
I'm just a little curious. They said something about the RAB board, and I think Commissioner Merkowitz asked about that, about the board, maybe about 3 months ago. I remember him asking, and here you're going to send them a letter, correct?
Yes, there is a current board that is seated. However, we're really excited about the fact that we are going to have election process for new board members to join the RAB, and that process will take place over the next few months. We're currently procuring a company that can create an electronic voting system for us so that individuals can vote electronically, and thinking through all of the steps that it will take to make sure that we properly advertise, communicate out to others, with the goal of making sure that we have a fully seated resident advisory board to engage at the time that we launch our stakeholder engagement for the strategic planning process.
Okay, so when this goes before the committee in April, correct?
This will go before the full board in April.
April.
Yes.
Can we see the copy of the letter that you send to the RAB board?
I will definitely talk to staff to see if we will have that letter prior to the April 5th. I think we allowed them time until April 17th. But let me circle back with, and I don't know if Ms. Cox, you have any additional context in terms of the timing for that letter?
So for the record, Darcel Cox, Chief Compliance Officer, and you're referring to the endorsement letter?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, typically we would have had it by now. I know that the committee, they did not have any questions. We're just waiting for the updated letter, but we definitely can get you that information before we present it to the full board.
Okay.
It'll also be included as a a copy of or part of the PHA plan that we submit with the commission packet.
Great. Thank you.
Good.
So the currently sitting board will be the ones who comment on this plan.
Yes.
And then you're working on an election process that will be broadly advertised
Yes,
and have electronic voting means.
yes.
Okay, great. Commissioner Byrd, do you have any questions you would like to ask?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. Then is there a motion that this committee joins staff recommendation to have the full commission approve HOC's fiscal year 2024 annual public housing plan?
So moved.
All right, there's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Byrd seconds, great. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Great. The committee approves joining the recommendation of staff to take the revisions to the annual public housing plan to the full commission.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There being no other items on the formal agenda, I hereby declare the committee adjourned, and we will see you in April.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.